I'm Eddie Fishwick, chairing this session. I'm from Care Life, and we're trying to look at raising the profile of social care. It'll be quite a good heated debate, hopefully. Dan, to my left, tell us who you are, Dan.
Yes, I'm Dan Archer. I'm MD of a business called Visiting Angels. We are a domiciliary care provider with 47 locations across the UK. Started the business in 2018, and we so far have grown by 14 so far this year. So we're having quite a busy year of expansion at the moment. So yeah, domiciliary care across the UK. I think part of the reason, Eddie, I've been asked to come onto this panel is that personally I've been interviewed by the BBC 3 times in the last year, talking specifically about this. I did a piece for BBC News 24 about 8 months ago now, where the figure at that point was 140,000 vacancies in adult social care, and now it's 165,000 vacancies in adult social care. And even on Radio 4 this morning, when I was travelling over to here this morning, there was a discussion about migrant workers, and there was an interview with somebody that was talking about bringing in overseas workers to work in care in the UK. My personal opinion, we don't fix the staffing shortage in adult social care in the UK by finding people from around the world that don't know how difficult the job is, bringing them to the UK and hoping they don't find out. They're going to figure it out pretty quickly, right? If we're going to fix the staffing shortage in adult social care, we need to redefine the role of a carer such that it is a more attractive job that people will want to do. Now, and that's ultimately what our organisation has done. When I started Visiting Angels, I spent a lot of time looking at the sector as a whole, and I realised that pretty much every care provider had a mission statement or a vision document which was aimed at clients and care delivery. We were the first provider to come to market with a people-focused mission statement. We say that our carers are the most important people in our business. We're paying up to £16 an hour for carers. We're guaranteeing a 5% pay increase each year. We've got proper contracts, not zero-hour contracts. Now, when you run your business that way, there's 2 things that need to happen. Firstly, the funding has absolutely got to be there to enable you to do that, which means I cannot do commissioned work for the council. I had a choice of whether I was going to do the work for the council at £18 an hour, as it was when I started. Sheffield City Council paying £16.80 an hour, or whether I was going to do private duty work for £5 or £6 an hour more than that. We've all got that choice every single day. Yeah. Now, the fact that many in the sector choose not to do that allows councils to get away with paying £16.80, right? So why does a council pay £17 an hour? Straight answer, because there's a provider stupid enough to work at £17 an hour. If everybody said no, the council would have to find the money they needed to go and do the work. I do work for the council, but I'm not on frameworks because they have to pay my rate, and they don't pay my rate unless they need what I can provide. But it actually then means it's easier to find staff, and it means that when you find staff, those staff have a greater tendency to stay with you as well. So from a retention perspective, I don't know, again, whether you know across the industry that the staff turnover rates in domiciliary care are anywhere between 60 and 70%. So from 100 people working in a domiciliary care provider, 60 or 70 may leave every year. My staff turnover at Visiting Angels nationally is 12%. And when you keep people, those people are able to be upskilled. And if they're upskilled, we can do the work that's required by an ageing population. Everybody talks about the ageing population that we've got, but the job of being a carer is more complex and more skilled than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And I think part of the root cause of the problem is that we're talking about politicians who are sanctioning payments who still believe the work done by carers is low skilled and therefore can be done by anybody. And it absolutely cannot be. And I would challenge anybody, I would even challenge Ed Balls in his purple t-shirt pretending he's working in adult social care, to go and do a case, a genuine case. We had a case in Sheffield with a gentleman whose tracheostomy, double peg, cough assist machine, track hoisted. Yeah? That's the sort of work social care providers are having to do now because of the shortage of people in the NHS. And yet we've still got politicians that believe anybody can do it. So I think that's probably something that needs to change before we can really challenge.
Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dan.
Totally agree.
The second part of our mission statement is to redefine the role of carers in society. And when I started, I thought, you know what, that's going to be hard work, because society is this great big amorphous blob, and you press in one area and it spills out elsewhere. I genuinely wasn't ready for how difficult it is to change the perception of a carer in the eyes of the carer themselves. Yeah. And I did a piece for BBC News 24 about 6-7 months ago now, and there was a carer who was interviewed alongside me on the red sofa. She was working for a provider in the West Midlands, and she described a situation where she was paid £9.90 an hour or £10 an hour, depending on whether it was a weekday or a weekend. And she may do a half-hour visit and drive half an hour to get to that half-hour visit. Yeah? So in effect, she's paid £4.95 or £5 an hour in that situation. right? Now, the BBC broadcast that, 14 million people believe that's normal. And millions of people go, I don't want to work in adult social care if it looks like that, thank you very much. My bigger issue in the middle of all of that is we're talking about raising the profile of what we do as a sector. If that's the profile that people see, if what people see when they turn on their TV for breakfast in the morning is somebody rushing around the place from visit to visit, not having enough time to provide care, not being paid for their time in between visits, never seeing the same client twice, no one would want to do that job. In that situation, it's perfectly reasonable to think we've got 165,000 vacancies. If what we say is the job can be, you see the same client on a set rota. You get enough time to care, so a minimum of an hour to provide that visit. You get the security of a provider that not only values what you do to pay you properly, but also helps you to train and develop so that you can do a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, a level 5 as you want to develop. If that job is the job that people see promoted through the media, that's definitely something that people will be interested in doing. And what the media likes to see is a fully invented story. It's a case study, right? So this is what the job looks like for this person. This is what their career pathways look like. They joined the industry at sort of 17, 18, and they've been involved in care for sort of 5 or 6 years, and they've now progressed into a coordination role or a supervisor role or a management role. If we tell that story, that again just chips away at this perception that it's a job that anybody can do and that it's an impossible job to do. My training and development manager at the original office that I opened in Sheffield, a lady called Natalie. Natalie was on our 2nd ever caregiver training course. She was about the 6th person to join the organisation when we started in 2018. Yeah? She supported my first client. When she supported my first client, she delivered 72% of Dorothy's visits. That level of consistency and continuity. She's been with the organisation for 5.5 years. She's now a training manager, and she's the perfect person to be training other people that come into the organisation. But prior to joining Visiting Angels, she'd been a hairdresser. You make the job more attractive. It appeals to not only those who are already in the sector, it appeals to people that are outside of the sector. Those really lovely people that are chatty and sit on a Tesco's checkout, and they're really too good to be sitting there going beep, beep, beep. But as a sector at the moment, we're asking them to sacrifice pay for the sake of their vocation. And actually, if they were paid better and rewarded better, they may choose to to give up the job they've got in retail and to come and provide care to somebody that really needs it. Yeah, so there's a little bit there about, again, what is it that we're promoting?
Hi, my name's Louise May. I own Care Plus Wirral. I'm in a very socially deprived area, Birkenhead. When I first started, I had all the ideas that Dan's talking about. You cannot just do private work because that will only give you the people who've got the money. You've got to work with your local authority. My local authority, they're now paying me £21.79 an hour.
I'm agnostic on where my clients come from. I do NHS work. I do council work, right?
Well, you're knocking the council.
No, absolutely not. I'm knocking.
I'm not a massive friend of the council.
I'm knocking the commissioners.
I am with Sharon and I
yes.
am with Samantha in saying you have to work with the council.
Yeah. Story I told to Sam earlier on. So my first council contract in Sheffield, right? So commissioner from Sheffield City Council rung me up, a lady called Kerry. So we've got this case down, a 32-year-old gentleman with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, right? They'd have 8 care providers fail on that case. The family wanted us because they'd heard of our reputation locally. She said, I've got a problem now. I said, well, Kerry, what's your problem? She said, we're only paying £16.80 an hour, and you, at the time we were at £21.50 an hour. Will you negotiate with me? I said, yeah, I'll negotiate with you, no problem at all. I'll do it for 24, because I've always been this arrogant, right? I'll do it for 24, I'll do it for 27, yeah? She said, well, you're very rude. I said, no, you're very rude, because you're asking for a service that has got a good reputation. There's only won that good reputation by charging what I charge, but you want to pay less for it. She went away. 6 months later, 3 other providers had failed at that, and it came back. She said, I am now reluctantly going to have to pay your rate of £21.50. I said, well, Kerry, that's unfortunate. We put our prices up 2 months ago. It's now £22.50. She paid £22.50. She paid £23.50, right? So I don't care whether they're council, private, or NHS. What I've got a problem with is a council commissioner expecting to buy it cheaper than a member of the public. Because under the 2014 Care Act, if we're on a personalised agenda, it is a bespoke product every time. It cannot be mass produced, it should not be bulk bought, okay? There's no justification for a council paying less for care. So that's where we agree. Really interesting though, when we talk about sort of post-COVID, and absolutely Sam, you're right, I was where you were, right? Our mission was to redefine the role of carers in society. When we were all clapping for carers, I'm like, yes, we've done it, job done. Yeah. Society gets it now, thank you very much. And what's happened, they've put the pots and pans away, they've gone back to work and everyone's forgotten about it. Right?
Yeah.
But out of the tail of that, to connect to what Sharon said, I had no absence with stress and anxiety prior to COVID. 0% absence, right?
Correct.
Post-COVID, 16% of absence with stress and anxiety, yeah? And when we're talking about redefining, promoting the sector and realigning people's thoughts on the sector, what was happening for my caregivers was they were going to their GP and saying that they were stressed, and the GP was saying, well, what do you do for a living? And they said, well, I work in care. And the GP was going, oh, that must be really difficult. Let me sign you off for 6 months. With no effective referral pathway, right? So I approached a clinical psychologist at Liverpool, John Moores, a lady called Ishbel Schraker, who put together a wellbeing programme for us. We designed our own from scratch, providing free talking therapy to our carers to help them, because the NHS could not help them in that situation. And Ishbel, interestingly, had said to me for 3 years she'd been trying to get a home care provider to embrace mental health within care, and nobody had wanted to talk to her because they were worried that if they opened Pandora's box that it would be a problem, right? As we all hopefully know, you don't fix mental health issues by not talking about them, you fix them by talking about them. Right?
Do you have any advice on some of the practical, cost-effective steps you took? Because a lot of the challenges people face is, how can I do that and afford it? And such as with the mental well-being course, like how much does that cost to set up?
The mental health programmes to date has cost about £30,000 to do, and that's for 47 locations across the UK. What I would say, and it's a fair challenge, a challenge we get all the time. There are two elements to what we do with being care-centric. So there's what I would say are big commercial levers, right? So better pay, proper contracts, paid drive time, because let's not pretend when a carer is driving from point A to point B they're not working, they are working. So we pay for that time as well. Now those are things that have a cost implication. Those are things which have to be borne by margin in terms of the work that we provide, which means our product ends up being more expensive as a result of that, okay? But if I then look below the line at things around that, there are, we use a lot of what a traditional home care provider would use in a recruitment budget for retention activity, yeah? Because if culturally, and I have a keyword culturally, because the cultural stuff costs virtually nothing, yeah? That's about aligning people to your values and ensuring that the management team treat people a certain way. I used to do a summer barbecue every summertime. We actually do 4 events a year, which are family events, and they're designed specifically to bring carers together. Because one of the challenges for dom care workers is they don't have a place of work, right? So by bringing people together, they feel part of a community of collective that work within the organisation. My summer barbecue used to be me standing in a bit of grass in front of the office, burning sausages and trying not to give people food poisoning, right? For the last 2 years, that's been a live music festival in Sheffield called Carefest. 4 live bands, hog roast, beer tent, gin tent, ice cream van, face painting for the kids, right? I organise music festivals now, by the way, right? So if anyone's in a band, let me know. I want to looking for acts for it. But that costs me about £5,000 to do that, yeah? I had 350 people attend last year's event. I employ 100 people in Sheffield. If everybody that works for me brought one member of their family, that's 200 people who are within the Visiting Angels family who are coming to that event. That means there's 100 and odd people that are not who are coming along as well. We recruited 7 carers from that event last year, okay? So I'm then looking at that and saying, well, I've spent a few £1,000s on that, but if I look at that from a recruitment budget perspective, it starts to become an easy justification to do. And those that are involved in the sector will all know how much we spend on training, and absolutely Sam's right, the more complex the work that we do is, the higher that training cost is. But if you've got a retention strategy which costs money but keeps people in the organisation, you also save money on training. Right?
So thanks for your interaction.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody. All the best.